This is Kate Orman. I'm typing hard, but in the meantime, enjoy the Sirens of Audio! Ow.
Don't I know you?
I think not.
Yes. I've seen you somewhere before.
I understand we all look the same.
Are you a Cyberman? Yes, that's it. We must have... No. I haven't been to Telos in 400 years.
Are you taking this matter seriously?
Not really.
Excellent.
G'day audiophiles, this is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who in the audio medium, and I'm back in freezing cold Tasmania. My name's Dwayne.
And I'm Philip, and Sydney's quite pleasant, but compared to Tasmania, everywhere's pleasant.
I'll rub it in, Philip, rub it in.
Welcome home, Dwayne.
Thank you. It's very, very strange being back in the office. It seems like it's been just yesterday when I was here the last time. It wasn't long enough.
No,
But
well,
what kind of a fool says that an 8.5-month holiday is not enough?
well, yes, it's just it's a lifestyle for you, not a holiday.
True, absolutely.
I was actually chatting. I was chatting with Janet Fielding a couple of days ago, and she was talking about your photos all over Facebook and the time you were having, and you were showing off with all your photos.
Oh, she gave me a hard time. She said, thanks very much, Dwayne, for showing us what a good time you're having. I could imagine her saying it too.
Yeah.
All right, so joining us for today's episode is writer of the new BBC audio drama production Dark Contract, Will Hadcroft. G'day, Will.
G'day.
Yeah,
Great
g'day.
to
Welcome
see
to
you.
have you here.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back too. Congratulations on the release of the new story. It's been a long time coming again, but at least it wasn't as long as the first time.
Yeah, thankfully we don't have any pandemics this time round to delay it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still the process between being commissioned and it finally coming out. It seems like a long time between the two events. So I'm glad it's out at last.
That's excellent.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit further about that because we've all had a chance to listen to it, and we'll talk about it a bit more shortly. But first, there's a couple of things. Philip, what's going on with our live events? We've got some live events coming up here in Australia.
And I think it's about 100 days away, maybe it's less than, I don't know, to be honest. A couple of months away, starting in September. We've got our Fraser Hines coming to, I've got to get this right now, don't I? He's starting off in Sydney, and then on the 8th of September, then we'll see him the following weekend in Melbourne, on the 15th. So dinner on the 14th and dinner on the 15th. Then the following week, it's actually his birthday, his 80th birthday. So we'll be spending his 80th birthday together in September up in Brisbane, and he'll be joined then by Katie Manning. And so in Brisbane, there'll be Katie Manning and Fraser Hines. And can I say Sydney people? I'm kind of hoping Katie may pop in. Don't know, but my fingers are crossed. We may still see him.
This is Katie. She's very unpredictable.
Katie is totally unpredictable, but we'll see what happens there. So, but Brisbane will be Katie and Fraser together, which is, lucky Brisbane, because they're the only guys that get them definitely for the whole day together. And then the following weekend is the big one with Katie. We fly to Adelaide for Saturday. And then, if all goes well and there's enough tickets sold, we fly to Hobart. But at the moment, Hobart's still on hold. I'm not confirming Hobart definitely, because we're short a few tickets for Tassie. They did sell a few more tickets before it's going to be worth bringing Katie down, because she has to have an audience. It's not fair to bring her just to a room with only a few people in. So there's a few people who bought their tickets, but not enough yet to justify going down. But September, every weekend, Fraser or Katie. It's going to be an amazing, amazing weekend.
So, with all that said, there's one more thing we've got to do before we talk about Dark Contract. Philip, do you know what that is?
Oh, we could just jump straight to Dark Contract, couldn't we?
No, we can't jump there because first we have to jump down the rabbit hole. Let's go.
Oh.
Thanks for joining us down the rabbit hole, Will. Now, I'd like to know, are you happy now? Are you happy?
The universe, the balance of the universe, the space-time continuum has been restored, Dwayne. I am very happy. The rabbit hole is now as it should be.
Well, that's according to Will Hadcroft, because of all the people who leave comments and things, your big beef with the Sirens of Audio has been my changes to the rabbit hole sound effect, which I've returned specifically for this episode just for you. So that brings me to... You certainly are. 'Cause I just don't do that for anybody. I don't do it for anybody. So my question is, when we're talking about musical themes, musical stings, styles, things like that, when shows do that, and Doctor Who has done that many, many, many times over the years, how has that affected you? Is there certain things that and I'll ask you, Philip. The first thing I thought of when Will was talking to me about this subject the other night was my mind went back to the Twilight Zone. And I don't know if either of you have ever watched much of the Twilight Zone, but I'm a huge fan of that show. I think it's one of the best TV shows ever made. Not including Doctor Who, of course. But the original Twilight Zone theme, because we have a theme for the Twilight Zone that's instantly comes to your mind, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Well, the original Twilight Zone theme did not have that, but it was just as good. So I remember when I first went back to the Twilight Zone, I remember thinking, that's not the Twilight Zone theme, and it was there for about the first 1.5 seasons, but then it changed. And there's quite a few other shows too where the themes have changed. So have there ever been any instances, Philip? I know you're not mad on themes and music as such, but has there been any style changes that you can think of that have affected you that way in the past?
I don't know what you mean if I'm not mad on themes or music.
Well, no. I only say that because you've said that you skip the themes, you don't listen to the theme.
Oh, so we only talk about theme tunes, are we? Not
all musical styles. You can bring up anything that comes to your mind.
Well, I mean, I collected soundtracks for a long time, so I have many records, vinyl, of all sorts of soundtracks and things. I love music, and I guess probably the first stuff I got into big time would have been all the Star Wars scores. So probably the music of John Williams. I think I have probably every John Williams score on vinyl. Probably not his last 10 years or so, just downloaded. But I used to collect every John Williams scores because I just loved how he used the leitmotif, and so the common themes of characters came along. I think most effective for me would have probably been The Empire Strikes Back with the Imperial March. That tune, and whenever it comes back in future stories, and that they use bits of that, John Williams uses bits of that theme in all the subsequent films. It just always brings that sort of horror on. And actually, one thing to John Williams, my mother totally inappropriately, when I was about 8 years old, took me to see Jaws. So that would have been 1978, and the music in Jaws and that whole I mean, that it still sends chills down me. So yeah, so music creates all sorts of emotions, and part of the reason why I love Murray Gold's stuff is because he uses the big orchestra, he uses the leitmotifs. You've got themes for Rose and for Martha and for Donna, and just the use of those themes, and just snippets of it. And I mean, it had kind of been done earlier, even in the 80s Doctor Who, with lots of stuff that's being written by the 80s. Curse you, Dwayne, for sharing the 40th anniversary of Five Doctors, because I wasted an hour and a half watching that because it was there, and I could, anytime the Five Doctors. Oh, it's fantastic! I love the Five Doctors.
I love it. Yeah.
It's my favourite version, that 40th anniversary version. Yeah. Yeah,
it's good, but every musical theme in that I know off by heart. Yeah. And it's because they changed some of the musical cues in that from the original, yep. And it still I like it still, but it stands out in terms of that's not the original cue.
Yeah. You know it's been altered, don't you? Immediately.
Yeah, it's astounding how well I know those stories, and Yeah, so yeah, music plays a huge part, and it still causes all sorts of emotion in me. As I was mentioning Jaws, I remember being on a cruise when I was about 12, and Jaws 2 had come out, and so I'd gone to watch it on the ship. I lasted about 10 minutes, and just that music was playing. And even though I'd gone with people, I couldn't stay there and watch the second film. I had to leave because I was already feeling terrified and scared and ill. And even though looking back at those films now, they're not that good. Actually, they're well filmed, but the shark, I mean, how could you be scared of that shark? But the music is what really terrified me and still does.
I'm glad you brought up Star Wars. So we're talking about music that's changed. You love the John Williams stuff, but what I really loved a release that came out in the late 70s called Star Wars and Other Galactic Funk. Do you remember that record that came out?
I've got
What was
it.
the name of the? Was it Nico
pop-
or something like?
Oh,
Yeah.
is it
No, no, no. It
Boston
wasn't.
Pop? Was it Pop Orchestra?
No, Miko. It was Miko.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no.
No, I've got
And
a
it was
different version of that.
so there's a 12. There was. I've got the 12-inch vinyl version, but there was a version that was always on the radio in the late 70s that I always remember, which kind of discoed up.
Oh, yeah, I've got that somewhere too.
Yeah.
And it's got a few lines to it as well, a few character lines and some beeps of R2D2.
Yeah, R2D2 beeps and things like that. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
remember that one, Will?
I remember Jeff Love and his orchestra doing
Yes.
a disco arrangement of a few different tunes.
There's a Doctor Who in that. There's a Doctor Who in that Jeff Love version.
Yeah,
I've
yeah. Although
got a Jeff Love
the
Doctor
one
Who.
I'm thinking of is more orchestral in its sound. That's the very first version of the Doctor Who theme I ever owned. Jeff Love and his orchestra, themes for superheroes. And I was so excited. I must have been 9 or 10 when I would have been 9, yeah, because it was pre Peter Howell on television. So I think it was my 9th birthday, and we were going around Woolworths in our local town, and my mother said, "Right, pick what you want for your birthday." And I went to this rack of LP records and found themes for superheroes, and it had the John Williams Superman tune, the Lonely Man, Incredible Hulk piano tune from the television series, Doctor Who, Blake Seven, all realised with a small orchestra. And I played that LP to death, and because I was too young to buy single records, never occurred to me that when the continuity announcer said on the end titles of Doctor Who, and you may like to know that this theme music is on a BBC record, it never occurred to me to ask my mother to get it. So I never owned the Delia Derbyshire version of the theme, and didn't know I could. It just didn't register that announcement on the end credits. So when the theme changed in 1980, and the titles as well, it was a massive jolt. I can remember. And again, I don't know why I never noticed it on the trailers for the Leisure Hive, because the Peter Howell theme was in the background on the trailers. That didn't register with me at age 10. So on the night that Leisure Hive episode 1 was broadcast, and we got the Starfield instead of the Time Tunnel, and we got the Peter Howell arrangement of the theme instead of the Delia Derbyshire one, I was on the edge of my seat with excitement. And when in the closing theme, they reinstated the middle eight, the which had not been in the Delia Derbyshire one for some years. I knew that more from the Jeff Love version than I did from television. So I was picking up on all the detail and all the differences between the two versions. And I loved it until I sort of midway through season 18, and then I started missing the Bernard Lodge titles and the Diamond logo and the Delia Derbyshire theme, and wished that they would change it back. But I got used to it, and when they were announcing at the end of those episodes that the theme music was available on a BBC single record, when I turned 11 in May 1981, I got that theme music record for my birthday then. And my mother grew to despise the Peter Howell arrangements of the theme music because I played it so much. I absolutely loved it. So that's
I say that 45 album, the Peter Howell version that came out with Tom Baker on the cover from I think Stellar Decay, the picture is.
doffing his hat, yeah.
With his hat, I still got it. I had that single before we got the 19th season out here.
Right.
18th season. What's this?
18th.
18th season.
Yeah.
So I knew the theme before the TV show had come because we were always months and months behind the UK, sometimes years behind.
So you knew it was going to change.
So I knew it was going to change, so that was the first time his new outfit, all in the burgundies and the new theme and all that.
Yeah,
So I bought the 45 long before the show actually aired.
Yeah, I bought it 3 times over, of course. So when
Peter Davis
Tom Baker regenerates, I got the Peter
Yes,
Davis
I got that
one
too.
just for the cover, and then the Colin Baker one after that for his first full season.
I don't think I ever saw Colin Baker one, but yeah, I got the Peter Davis and the Tom Baker.
And the astronauts.
Actually, I've got
on
the Colin
B-side.
Baker one.
Yeah, I love the Peter Howell composition, the astronauts on the B-side. Very funky, sort of combination of disco and synths, and very spacey sounding. Yeah, like all his music at that point, like his music for the Leisure Hive as well. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Yeah. So that's an example of liking the change. I haven't always liked the change.
Doctor Who fans don't like change.
Yeah, it doesn't always work and doesn't always go in favour.
You got to like the Peter Howell theme, and may I suggest that you use some of that to get used to the new Rabbit Hole theme next week. This was a one-off today. We were talking about this subject, and I was thinking about other shows that had themes that were jarringly different, particularly when I went back and when I got the DVD sets and things like that. One show that came to mind was Magnum, a very recognisable theme for Magnum PI for most of its run, but for the first 15 episodes, when I got the DVD set and I started watching from episode 1, wow, the theme was so different that it was jarring for me, and I didn't like it. So, but I can imagine going back and feeling that jarring feeling when it changed after 15 episodes. We also got talking about Space 1999, which had a completely different theme for the second season, and interestingly, Will, I think you preferred Series 2's theme, and I preferred Series 1.
Yeah. I think for me, the Series 2 theme, I prefer it because it's got more variation in it as a melody, and it's a hummable melody. Like down, 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 down. Whereas the Series 1 is that sort of bam, 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 bam. It's not got more of a melody to it. It's more of a vibe.
It's more stringy. It's got much more strings in the season.
I can sing them both. The big change in
could
terms
you?
of is could.
No, could you?
No, I'm not now. I was just trying to make sure I could do both. The Avengers, the TV show, The Avengers, the theme changes in that. There's, several different themes over the years. It's only 6 seasons, but the new Avengers compared to the Diana Rigg compared to Honor Blackman, I think even the beginning. And Big Finish, of course, do the different with the different releases. They've got the different theme songs, and they're so different.
And Tara King was different again.
I was trying to remember the Tara was different. I think Tara is different.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I was trying to remember that one. It's a bit like the Benny themes of Big Finish throughout the years, from singing from actual songs with lyrics. For goodness' sake.
But can you
Benny's changed a
imagine,
lot.
Will? Can you imagine how we felt as Australian fans when we were watching Carnival of Monsters, episode 2? I think the cliffhanger to episode 2. And the Delaware theme came on, and that was one of the most jarring things I've ever heard. Very, very strange. Does not suit that title sequence in any way, shape, or form.
All the program, that doing rhythm is just absolutely terrible, isn't it?
It's very bouncy, wasn't it?
Yep.
What were your thoughts of that, Philip?
2 and 3. Oh, I still remember thinking, what the heck's going on? Because it's both episode 2 and 3, and every time it repeated. Of course, Australia. I think Australia was the only country to get the Delaware theme.
Yeah.
I don't know why it was, just for parts 2
I
and
think
part
it was
3.
put on by accident, wasn't it? I
was.
think that's the story.
Well, I think the intention was for the whole season, and they just went, "This is really bad," and then took it off. But they missed episode 2 and 3 in Australia, so for years we were always getting that theme, and I loved it. And I remember recording it. And I've still got an audio tape of it. I think when I actually recorded that episode of Carnival Monsters to get it on one of the many reruns we had of Carnival Monsters, because that's how my first copy of that I had by taping it off the TV.
Speaking of taping it off the TV, that's an interesting point too, because Revelation of the Daleks was something that I'd recorded on audio cassette off the TV, and I think I eventually recorded it onto video as well. But the audio of that has been permanently destroyed because they've never got the rights for Jimi Hendrix's Fire, which was the original music playing when the DJ was exterminating the Daleks. It was the Jimi Hendrix song, and nothing else comes even close to sounding as good as that, the original version of that. So it's not something I don't think we'll ever hear in an official capacity anyway, because I definitely don't have the off-air recording anymore, which is a shame.
Talking about taping things off the telly. Sorry, Philip.
No, go ahead.
I did that with the tripods. I had the family had just got a video recorder at the end of series 1 of the tripods. So when it came to series 2, I recorded the entire series 2. I had Ken Freeman's single record of the theme music. And the tripods is unusual in that it has a different melody for the opening to the closing, and stylistically different too. So you've got this very fast-paced bum bum, this sort of very electronic sounding piece, and then you've got the closing for it,
the moody,
which is
moody credits.
That yeah, and it's slower. So I had that as a single. My mother hated that as well by the time I'd finished with it. But there was no incidental music album for years after. So I went through the whole of season 2, my video recordings, with a cassette recorder and captured every bit of music that had no talking on it, so that I could have my own incidental music album. And then I think it was a good 10 years later that it was independently released. Ken Freeman released a soundtrack album. And I wrote to TV Zone magazine and said how thrilled I was that this incidental music had finally come out on disc. And they printed my letter, and there was a picture of the 3 boys from series 1. And underneath it said, "Tripods, music worth waiting for." That was the legend underneath. And it was, because Ken Freeman's music was more advanced than, say, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop style, because it sounded like a combination of synthesizers and orchestra, when in actual fact it was all synthesizers. Ken Freeman was a genius in inventing his own equipment rather than just using commercially available stuff. So that worked very well, the tripods music. In terms of changing things, I once heard Craig Charles from Red Dwarf. Someone asked him why the theme to Red Dwarf had remained pretty much the same throughout, certainly the song at the end. And he said, well, if it ain't broke, why change it? You know, some things really work very well. And the moment you alter it, you mess the thing up and people start going off it. I mean, we had a bit of that in Doctor Who when Keith McCulloch did his version for the Sylvester McCoy era. That really divided fans, that particular arrangement of the theme. I wasn't keen at the time, but it's grown on me, and now I like it a great deal. But it took a while to adjust.
It grew on me too, but I was because the Trial of a Time Lord was only 1 season. I was looking forward to hearing more of that. I enjoyed that theme.
Yeah.
So I was waiting, and I think season 24 was the very first one that I was eagerly anticipating live for the first time ever. So yeah, when that came on, I was quite disappointed. But yeah, it has grown on me, of course. in time. I will mention one other Doctor Who theme then that relates to Big Finish, and that is the Eighth Doctor theme, because I think the original, the original David Arnold theme is the quintessential Eighth Doctor theme. I think that suits him perfectly. And he
It's
has
better than the
few
John
different themes.
Debney movie one, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, without a doubt. But when Lucy Miller came along, Nick Briggs came along and wanted to redo the theme, and he had some connection to this theme. There was a bit of complaint about the change, and he stuck to his guns. But that is one theme that I eventually grew to like it. But it took me a long, long time. And when they changed back, when Dark Eyes started, they went back to that original David Arnold theme, which I think was a great decision, because it's pretty much like Tom Baker's basically the theme that he was for his 6 out of 7 years. There's not very much Tom Baker that you're going to get with the Peter Howell theme. So you're going to get mostly the Derbyshire theme. So
I think it's great when a producer decides to change it back. I mean, I like the fact that they'll admit that it's not working. Like the Delaware version, Barry Letts just said, no, we'll stick to the previous one. We're not using this, even though he'd commissioned it. It was good of him to see that it was not working. So we'll just dump that and go back to what we had before. Because a lot of producers will say, well, we've spent the money, we've done it now, and we're stuck with it whether you like it or not. There are people who are like that in the business, aren't there? Thankfully, he was not one of them.
I do like the Time War theme too, the Doctor's theme, the Doctor Who theme for the Time War, with all the clanging metals and things. I do like that version. It's much more aggressive. I always listen to that one because it always keeps me occupied.
And I try to avoid it. It's funny, isn't it? People's different tastes. I don't. That's probably my least favourite one out of all the themes. So when I see it's a Time War story, I go, I've got to listen to that theme again.
I love that theme. Really... I look forward to it. And then the War Master theme is well thrown in. And that version, which is like an inverted Doctor Who theme, I really think that's very clever.
Now that one is brilliant. Yeah, for sure.
Which is an inverted Doctor Who theme. But there you go.
It is. Clever. All right. Well, on that note, this producer will be going to the current Rabbit Hole theme next episode, Will. This was a one-off just for you. So.
Right. I might have problems with this. I may have to go for counselling.
Just jump 30 seconds, you're fine.
You'll be right. Just skip. Philip does that. Skip.
Yeah,
skip.
Skip all the time.
Or play it on triple speed or something. All right, so we'll crawl up out of the rabbit hole and we'll have a chat about Dark Contract. So before we do talk about it, I'll play a little bit from the story. But this is something that Matthew Waterhouse tweeted about the story very recently. He said, Dark Contract is set in Victorian London, but not the romantic London of Pulp Fiction. This is the underbelly of the 1830s, soon after the New Poor Law, with its workhouses for the poor, its dirt and smells, its pimps. Very good stuff. So that's what Matthew had to say, and here is a little clip from it.
It was true. Tegan was trying to get back to Heathrow Airport in 1981 to start her job as an air hostess. So far, they had visited 1666 and witnessed the Great Fire, and then attended a garden party at a manor house in 1925. The TARDIS seemed to be avoiding 1981 for some reason. "Tegan, I'm sorry," the doctor began. "I know that..." But Tegan cut him off, her face beaming. "It's Dickensian London." Yes," the doctor stammered, fiddling nervously with one of the switches on the console. "I suppose it is. I've always wondered what this time was really like." Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. "You're familiar with Dickens' work, then?" the doctor asked mildly. "Who isn't? David Copperfield, Oliver Twist," Tegan enthused. Then she broke into song. "You got to pick a pocket or two." "Well, quite," the doctor said, finally allowing himself to smile. "But you do know that people aren't actually going to be bursting into song?" Tegan put her hand on her hip. "Of course." The reality of this time period is considerably darker. If we go out, we must remain low-key and stay together in a group. And, for once, I think we all need a change of clothes.
All right, Will, you've had a chance to have a listen to it. I'll give you the first word on what your thoughts were on the final production. Were you happy to get this story out?
Very much so, yeah. I knew even before I was halfway through writing it, that this is going to sound good. If you set something in Dickensian London, the sound designer is going to pick up on the descriptions. And especially as I had the same sound designer as Resurrection Plant, David Rucroft, after hearing what he did with that, I knew this was going to be a corker in terms of how it sounds. So I'm very happy with the story. We John Ainsworth and Michael Stevens and myself, we worked very hard on this one to get it as good as we could. I felt like I'd been worked a bit harder by Michael this time round, and I'm wondering if it might be because it's based in real history rather than a planet somewhere else on the other side of the universe where you can make your own rules up. This has to be historically correct if you're going to use this kind of setting. So I do wonder if that's why it felt harder this time. I mean, enjoyable and challenging, but I did feel like I worked that bit harder on it. I felt like the notes coming back from Michael were more nuanced and more specific about things. So I knew when the final draft was done, I knew we'd worked as hard as we could on this to get it as good as it could be. So once it had gone off to have the sound design added and Matthew reading it, I had a kind of a confidence that it was going to come out good. And having heard it twice now, for me, it's great. I'm very happy with it. It's everything I wanted it to be. Matthew, I don't want to do Matthew down here, but I wasn't sure he would be able to do as good a job as Fraser Hines had done with the Resurrection Plant. And I'm very pleased to say his reading is excellent. All the different voices that he puts on for the different characters. I feel that he's got Peter Davison's that slightly breathless performance that Peter used to do on screen. He's got that off to a T. Yeah. So generally across the board, I'm happy with the whole thing.
He does a nice Tom Baker too.
Yes, he certainly does.
It does. Yeah.
With the novelizations that he's done for Big Finish, the audio novels, done a couple of those now, so he's had plenty of practice with Tom, and he's I made a note of the breathless Fifth Doctor because I've been listening to a lot of that lately with some of the more recent stories I've been listening to with Peter Davison himself. He does the breathless, but it's not overdone. So it's not overdone to the point where it's turned into like parody. It's just subtle enough that you know who it is. Same with Tegan and the accent there. So yeah, he does a great job. Anything with Matthew Waterhouse on it gets a thumbs up from me as far as his performance goes. That's for sure. How did you get to the setting of Dickensian London? And what about this Poor Law? I was listening to it going, Poor Law? What's that? Poor Law? It made me. It was one of those stories that made me look up what it was about. Just remind us how you ended up on that and the details of what this Poor Law is for our listeners.
Right. So first of all, this time round, I didn't suggest the lineup of the Doctor and companions. It was requested from me. So John Ainsworth got in touch. I said, Michael is thinking Fifth Doctor and Adric. Could you supply us, 3 basic story ideas, and we'll choose the one that we like best. And I said, well, does he mean just the Fifth Doctor and Adric, or that season 19 cast of the 4 of them? And he said, well, I think he means that. Yeah. So I pitched. In the end, I think I pitched 4 different ideas because I was on a bit of a roll. So I came up with 4. But that particular one, the one they went with, that came out of the idea. I remember that John Nathan Turner, the producer on television, when he wrote the character Biog, he said that Adric was a sort of artful dodger type character, which, apart from him stealing a few melons in Full Circle, it was never really explored on television. Him as an artful dodger, a pickpocket, or anything like that. Really, it never really came across. So I thought, well, what if we do a story where he is an artful dodger type character, and then the perfect setting for that would be Dickensian London. And I remembered a BBC adaptation from the early 2000s called, it was Bleak House. I think Andrew Davis adapted it. And it was done like a modern day soap opera in half-hour episodes across a couple of weeks. And I'd been absolutely gripped by that at the time, that adaptation. So I bought the DVD and thought, right, I'll rewatch that to get the rhythm of the speech, the way things are, and then I read up on Bleak House. I'd watched the adaptation, so I read up on the novel of Bleak House, and that's when I started hearing this phrase, the new poor law. So in actual real history, there was the poor law in the 1600s, where local villages kind of decided, sort of the mayor and the local clergyman of each village in England would decide how you would handle those who were unemployed and those who were destitute. But it sort of changed radically from village to village and town to town. So they came up with the new poor law in the early 1800s to centralize the whole thing. And that was with the intent on making it more fair across the board. Unfortunately, with the creation of workhouses, in the end, it kind of magnified the destitution and the desperation of the people who were in that situation. So they were just thrown into these workhouses and would work hard for not very much. You know, they had a roof over their head. They ate gruel. You know, we know the story of Oliver. Please, sir, can I have some more and all that? You know.
Well, it is kind of the caves of Zandazani. It's what Robert Holmes was doing where they were closing down the mines in one area, making them unemployed, and then shifting them somewhere else to make them work for nothing. And that sort of capitalism was very much what was happening in London at that time.
Yeah. So I thought I really should do something with all this, rather than just do some aliens have come and deal with the aliens. I wanted to do a story that really the underbelly of the whole thing is exploitation. Because I am an old-fashioned writer in that I want my story to have a theme to it. The Resurrection Plant had a theme to it. Not that dissimilar, as it turns out, but I wanted there to be a theme that ran all the way through, so that, as Barry Letts and Terence Dicks used to talk about, if the writer gets stuck with the story, we encourage him to think, what is this about? And then more story comes out when you revisit the theme. What is this actually about? So that's kind of my sort of benchmark, my rule to writing a story. What is it about?
Quite unusual these days, because writers like to get the audience to make up the story for themselves, don't they?
Well, I have a bit of a bugbear with that, Dwayne. I don't like the sort of soap opera approach to modern dramas, including Doctor Who. The idea that you just you create a situation, create a cast of characters, you throw them into the situation, And however they react to one another and to the situation, that's your story. And there's no ending in mind when they're writing it. It's not. There's no
But
theme to it.
can I just
I
say
find it frustrating.
That was Dickens, though. Dickens was the first soap opera writer that there was, because when he was writing a chapter a week for a magazine, he didn't know when he started the story how he was going to finish it, because it was going to be months later. He was just writing chapter by chapter, being paid for each chapter he handed in. The Bleak House, Great Expectations, those were the first soap operas, because he was just creating characters, sticking them in bizarre situations, and he had no idea what was coming on next until he started writing the next chapter. So that sort of approach has been around since Dickens, and now we look at him as a master.
Yeah, and I'm copying Dickens.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of an oxymoron there, a bit of a contradiction, because
But by the end of those stories, they were tied up, weren't they?
Yeah, you don't get the feeling that Dickens has painted himself into a corner and doesn't know how to end it, do you? I suppose that's my critique of some modern television, not all. Because it's written by a series of writers. Obviously now we have a head writer, don't we? It's more in the American format, where you have a head writer who will have. I mean, Russell T Davies was great when he did it with the Bad Wolf thing. It ran all the way through. It wasn't utterly essential. You could miss an episode and not really miss the Bad Wolf thing, but the thread was there all the way through. So sometimes it works very well. That's a good example of it working very well. In other shows and in some Doctor Who's, you get to episode 13 and you're thinking they clearly had no idea where this was going when they set out, and they clearly have no idea how to end it. So if I'm critical of anything, it's that, really. You watch however many seasons of Lost there were, and you get to the final episode of Lost, you don't get the impression that this was planned out at the beginning, or even at the beginning of that last season.
Using Dickens as well, because I'm a bit of a Dickens fan. When you actually look at The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which of course he died before the end of it, no one has a clue how that was supposed to end. No one has a clue who the murderer is, and I'm not sure he knew either. And the mother loved, and Dwayne will love this, is musicals, because the Mystery of Edwin Drood has been turned into a musical. And during the course of the musical, it just ends when the book ends, and then the audience gets to vote who was the murderer, and every single cast member has a song, and they wrap up the music. So it's a different ending every night, depending on how the cast, or according to how the audience vote on who they think did it. But we hold up someone like Charles Dickens, who's one of the best writers in all of English history, and I would actually argue he had no idea how he was going to end his stories, because the perfect example is Edwin Drood, because he died before the end of it. No one has a clue how that was going to end.
Yeah,
that's me playing devil's advocate.
No. I appreciate your points, and
that's quite a good reason for not ending a story, though. Dying.
That's true.
Yeah, I'll give him a pass on that one.
It certainly works as an exercise. I mean, it's a great idea that the audience then vote on how the thing ends. That as an exercise, as a sort of a play in the theatre or something. That's a great thing to be part of. But I never. It might just be me. I don't know. But I never sit down without having any idea how it's going to end or where it's going. I'm old-fashioned in the sense that when I plan out a synopsis, and actually BBC Audio want it that way. You don't say, oh, here's a paragraph, and you'll find out what it's about when I've finished. They say we want a paragraph of the basic idea. Then when they're set on the particular one that they want, then they want a 2-page, 2 lots of A4 of the entire story from start to finish, what it's about, who's in it, where it goes, how it ends, and then when they're happy with that, they commission the story. So that is their method, but it also happens to be the method I prefer. I want to have it planned out. I don't mind if a writer has it planned out and then they have a great idea as they're writing up the main story, and they've thought of something that's not in the synopsis and they add it, or they might end up taking it to a different conclusion than the one in the synopsis because it's better than the one in the synopsis. So I'm not so rigid and inflexible as to not, there is some fluidity to what I'm doing, but I do like to work to a plan.
I do think you did an amazing job capturing the bleakness of the period. I think we do have a Hollywood view of London at that time. I was going to say it's not Victorian; it's before Victorian London, is it? But sort of, I'm kind of picturing Victorian London. But you managed to actually pick up the grottiness really well and the dark underbelly of what London was like. And I think using Oliver as an example of, our expectation, and then you painted it bleak, was actually a very clever way of doing it. Even though, I mean, Oliver mind you, is a very bleak story, and even the musical ends up with the main character being viciously murdered, and people go to be hanged. But it has got a beautiful cleansing quality towards it all, whereas you managed to bring in a lot more darkness, which was very effectively done.
Yeah, I wanted it to feel real. That's why there's a line in it where Nyssa says to Tegan, and your people make musicals about this. I love the musical of Oliver, and I love the songs and everything. But it is from an outsider, Nyssa, an alien coming in. It would, I think, be strange that we take this horrible period in history and make jolly songs up about it. As much as we love the song.
You're hard pressed to find any period in history that isn't a horrible period in history. The very act of history is the fact of people doing horrible things to each other. So, yeah. and we can make musicals about anything.
Absolutely. So I just thought I'd get that in because the great thing with having characters who are not human and don't have our history is you can bring them in as an outsider and have them pass comment and pass judgment, and make the human characters think, I hadn't thought of that before. So yeah, I love all that. I love being able to do it in a Doctor Who.
I often compare stories and try and work out whether the writers had an inspiration from somewhere else, whether it be Doctor Who or anywhere else. But I was thinking towards the conclusion where your ideas were coming from, was there any influence from, say, the Mark of the Rani? I was thinking getting a Mark of the Rani vibe there with certain elements of your story.
You're not the first to ask me that. I was asked by, I don't know if you're aware of the podcaster Chat About It, Don't Shout About It, Rachel.
Yes.
Yep. I was talking to her recently, and she asked about, although this was more to do with this would have been the resurrection plan. Yeah, the dinosaurs in the jars. That's right. Yeah, so I'm mixing up my stories now. That was about the resurrection plan. So what are you thinking with regard to Dark Contract and its relationship with the Mark of the Rani?
Well, I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to spoil it. But basically what the aliens were looking for from what they were gathering is similar to...
In the Mark of the Rani, it was the brain fluid, was it? The sleep, the chemical that induces sleep, yeah. So I can answer your question right now. No, I wasn't thinking of the Mark of the Rani. I wanted the aliens to be in need of something that's unique to human beings. That's how that thought process started. I thought, what would they need from us? And I thought, well, there'll be nothing technologically that they need. If they're able to build a massive spacecraft and come halfway across the universe, and there's nothing we've got materially that they would need. So I thought, well, what about something within us, organically, some components of the human body? What if they needed that? And I did some research. I was trying to find something that was unique to the human body. And instead found not something that was unique to the human body, but something that was a recent discovery scientific discovery to do with the human body, to do with there's a sort of underneath the skin, but before you get into your innards, there's a film, a gauze-like film called interstitium, and that has like sort of lymphatic fluids bedded in this gauze, you see. And there was discussions amongst scientists as to whether this thing really existed, and then they found out. I say recently, within a few years, recently, that this thing does exist and does perform this particular function. So I thought, well, I'll make it that then. They need something from that, and our planet is the only planet for, who knows how long. It's unique to our planet, and so they've come here to take it, but they don't want to take it. They don't want to just rob us of it. So they've come up with this arrangement, which in their eyes is perfectly moral. In other people's eyes, no. As the story unfolds.
I also like the dreamscape sequences with Adric, and I was thinking, well, that's, if you're going to go, that's a great way to go.
Yeah.
And it was a good opportunity to have a sequence with the Fourth Doctor as well. So it was nice to get that slipped in there.
That with the Fourth Doctor, that was something that's been on my mind for, and Romana, something that's been on my mind for many years in connection with Adric, is that when you watch Full Circle up to Logopolis, the relationship between the Doctor and Adric is very much a mentor and his student, or a father figure to a young boy who's got no family. And it works very well. The moment the regeneration occurs and the moment we get into Castrovalva, the whole thing is altered. The relationship is different. The Doctor is more like an irritating older brother who looks down upon Adric like an irritating younger brother. And the addition of Nyssa and Tegan alters it as well. So when you get to Earthshock and Adric says, I want to go back home, you can see how he's got to that. The Doctor is no longer the person who took him away from his boring home life, and because he didn't fit in, did he? On Alzarius, he didn't fit in with his brother's gang. He didn't belong on the Starliner either, and that's why he stowed away on the TARDIS. But by the time we get to Earthshock, he doesn't really belong with the Doctor either.
Well, I was going to say that, you on the TV series, you notice that, like in Kinder, they're really going at each other. With that relationship is very obvious by then. There's a little bit of tension in Four to Doomsday, but by the time Kinder comes, which is not very long into the run, there's that tension is very obvious. That it makes the relationship, as you said, so different.
So I set that contract between Black Orchid and Earthshock. So I thought, in my story, I want to sow the seeds of him wanting to go back home, so that when it links up with Earthshock, it's already there in his mind. He's had enough. It's not fun anymore. He wants to go back.
Though I also liked what you did with Tegan, because you actually made her want to be part of understanding, learning. She wasn't the whingy, complaining, why haven't you got me home? She actually got quite excited about exploring, which was nice, and then was disappointed by what she actually discovered.
Yeah, with the I don't mind if I stay with you guys, that thing I'd picked up on, because I watched all season 19 again on the Blu-ray in preparation for writing this, and I picked up on at the start of Black Orchid when the scanner shutter goes up and they're on the railway station platform. And she says, I don't mind. I told you, you don't have to keep trying to get me back home. I don't mind staying for a while. I picked up on that sentiment. So then it happens again at the start of Dark Contract, where they're all waiting for her to explode. that they've landed in the wrong time again, and she's happy because she wants to explore Dickensian London. But then, of course, when she gets into it, it's a much darker situation than in the slightly sanitized fiction that she's used to. By the time she gets to the shanty town, and she's in that situation with Carter and Gerald and the women's house, and Nyssa being sent off, and then Carter talks about the woman in his life. Some of that was extrapolated from Bill Sikes and Nancy. I wanted it to be a nod towards that, and the not just the cruelty of the age in which they live, but also the cruelty of individuals and the sort of paranoia that was around in people like him. Yeah, so some of that stuff with Carter is Bill Sikes. Yeah,
You mentioned before Matthew Waterhouse. He really did do an extraordinary job with the reading of it, because I still had in my head that this was a full cast recording. And so it's interesting that, because just the way we're talking about, Tegan, Nyssa, Fourth Doctor Romana, he did such a good job in terms of his reading of your story that it came across. As I think back now, I keep thinking, oh, it wasn't a full cast story, but in my head, it flowed so well that it came across like a full cast recording.
Yeah.
So that was all down to Matthew. He really did do an amazing job of narrating this.
I couldn't be more proud of the way he did it.
When we were talking about Oliver before, you mentioned the song. There was a line, "You got to pick a pocket or two." Well, that was Janet's voice in my head when I remembered that. So it's funny you mentioned that, Phil.
Yeah. He has done me proud, Matthew. Yes, I wasn't sure what I'd heard. A few snippets of other things he'd done, because I was curious as to how he might do mine. But for some reason, I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. He really pulled it out the bag. All the four, the ensemble cast of Doctor and companion, but also characters that I'd invented. They sound like they should sound. Yeah, he interpreted how I was describing them absolutely bang on. Yeah, and it, like you say, I mean, Fraser Hines was similar with the Resurrection Plant. I feel like I've seen that on television. I know I wrote it, but because of Fraser's reading and the sound design, and we've got the sound designer on this, complementing Matthew's reading, David Rucroft. Splendid job. Yeah, I'm so glad he did it, because you really feel like you've been there. You feel like you've been to those locations and met those people. There's credit to the whole production of it, really. They've done a great job on it.
Well done to you too, Will, because I guess getting one story out would have been just lovely. You've got one in print, but the fact they came back to you again and said, "Give us some more options," and you've now got number 2 out. You're on track to producing hundreds over the next few years.
Well, we'll see. I was wondering if we would, they talk about in music, don't they, the second album syndrome. Is it going to be as well received as the first one? I'm going to put my neck on the line now and say I think this might well be at least as well received, and maybe for some better received. My wife, who you might class as a casual viewer of Doctor Who, wasn't really. She enjoyed the Resurrection Plant, and she was proud that her husband had written it, and all of that, and she loved the way it sounded, the way Fraser read it, blah blah blah. But not really interested in Time Lord mythology, not interested in regenerations and whether the lore of the 1960s being meshed in with the current, the new sort of interpretations of regeneration that we've had more recently, and that none of that really registered with her. She wasn't bothered. So when I read her the manuscript of that before it was even finally agreed on, she loved it from there on, from me reading it to her. So when it came out and she heard it, she says she prefers it to the Resurrection Plant. And I've had one or two people, because the download came out before the CD. So I was getting one or two people getting in touch before the CD had been released because they've got the download. And early signs are that it is popular with those who bought it.
Because I really enjoyed the Resurrection Planet. I actually prefer Dark Contract more. And actually, you captured me within the first paragraph. The richness of your language that Matthew starts off with, just the beautiful of the English language. Because it's a very rich first couple of paragraphs, and then becomes much more relaxed. But the beginning is actually quite formal and quite Dickensian in some ways. I was trying to work out, were you trying to be a Dickens sort of language to start off with, and then it became much more...
I wanted it to feel like you were stepping into a Dickens novel.
Yeah.
And then the TARDIS arrives in it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it felt.
So rather than it being a Doctor Who story that is Dickensian, I wanted it to feel like we're in the world of Charles Dickens now. And we have that opening scene with the Admiral and the little boy. And then we cut to a street further away and the TARDIS materializes. So I'm glad that's worked, because that was my intention.
Yeah, we definitely did. I think you've done an amazing job. Looking forward to the next one coming out.
Oh, I hope there is a next one coming out. We'll have to see.
Well, you said that after the last one, and there was. So
I did. So we'll see.
So what do you do with all those pictures, Will? Do you put them in the drawer for another time, or?
Yeah. Don't throw anything away. All writers will tell you this. Don't throw anything away, because it can either be recommissioned by somebody else, or you may be able to rework it into a new idea that they do want. So there was one of the ones that wasn't chosen. I can't tell you anything about it really, but I'd done it as a last minute idea. So I did the 3, including Dark Contract, and then I had an idea for a 4th, which I wrote up very quickly and thought, oh, they're not going to be bothered about the 4th one. And John said, remind me about this one, number 4, after we've finished with Dark Contract, because I think we could do something with that. So there's already a suggestion that we may do another with this leftover idea. How we would do it, or which Doctor it would be, I'm not sure. It's tied to a very particular story, but it could be revisited by a later Doctor or a much later Doctor. That's all I can tell you about it at this stage. But if they go with that one, that will be quite an interesting tale.
Well, he's hoping for many, many more stories to come. Excellent. All right, you stick around, Will, for some recommendations?
Yeah, love to.
Okay, so I know last time you were on it was Philip's turn, so I'll just check my list now. Oh, sorry, you've come on the wrong day because it's Philip's turn once again to go first. Now, I will give you some warning, Philip. I know you don't, but I've got to go by the list.
Okay.
You know, I have to give you some warning because if you pick this story that I'm going to pick, I'm going to be cross.
Well, what are you going to pick? We'll see.
Well, there was a cryptic clue for you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to choose Dark Gallifrey, the War Master.
Dark Gallifrey. Good.
Okay.
Not the one I'm picking. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Good. So yes, I'm not sure, but people may be aware that another monthly release coming out after the Sontaran War. It's a very different approach they're taking. So Dark Gallifrey, the first 3 sets were on Morbius, and they were all by. I've forgotten who they were by. No one's going to remind me.
James Goss, wasn't it?
No, James Goss is the next set.
Or was it Tim Foley?
Tim Foley. Thank you. So Tim Foley did the first set. It wasn't anything like what I expected. It was basically pirate ships in time vortexes. And yeah, so it was very, very bizarre. And so I thought the War Master, good, I know what I'm going to get. And then the first episode was Bernice Summerfield and the Unbound Doctor. And so once again, so I have no idea where it's going. But I'm going to just recommend Dark Gallifrey, the War Master Part 1, just because it's David Warner's final performance. And what an amazing actor. He's always been an astounding actor. He's sounding a bit old in this. I mean, this is, I don't know how soon after this he died. And so he's sounding slightly old, but you soon forget about that because you get carried away by the story. And just Lisa Baum and David Warner being able to be together doing a James Goss script, and it is a James. We all know what James Goss is like. I've got no idea what's going. So it's intrigued me. Morbius I enjoyed. Tim Foley writes really well, but I'm really looking forward to Derek Jacobi joining next as Bernice with Derek Jacobi. I have no idea where it's going either. So I'm intrigued. So not your normal Big Finish type stories, but certainly very intriguing and enjoyable. So that's my recommendation. Have a hang on to Dark Gallifrey. I would also recommend, by the way, what we've just listened to, The Dark Contract. That's well worth listening to as well. And his previous story too. So definitely both of those are worth listening to.
The Will Hadcroft collection.
The Will Hadcroft collection.
All two.
There'll be more, I'm sure.
The complete works of Hadcroft.
Is Will next or are you next?
I'll go last. So Will, you hit us with your recommendation.
Right. Well, we see that there. This is The Demons Within, a BBC audio original by Gary Russell.
Very good it is too.
Yeah.
And I bought that mainly out of curiosity. When I saw it advertised that it's read by David Banks, I thought, David Banks reading a 10th Doctor story, and I like the reader to be somehow connected to the era that it is. It used to slightly irritate's not the right word, but if I saw like Stephen Pacey from Blake Seven reading a Doctor Who, I think he was never in it.
But he has done.
But he read Enlightenment, didn't he?
He did Enlightenment.
Yeah. So sometimes
and very well, by the way.
Yeah. This is the point I'm making, really. Another one was the 13th Doctor BBC audio original. Neil Bushnell wrote it. I can't remember what it's called now, but a male reader. And I thought, no, it should be Mandip Gill or a woman who's been in the 13th Doctor era. I'd prefer a woman to read it with it being a female Doctor. Anyway, so with this one, The Demons Within, I knew that Gary Russell would turn out a good tale. He always does. But I was curious to hear how David Banks would do it. And would he be able to get a close approximation of David Tennant's delivery? And it turns out he can. I was very pleasantly surprised. And because the story is quite dark, David's deep cyber leadery voice works very well on it. He gets the delicacy and the nuance just right. Instead of it just being this sort of threatening deep voice all the way through, he has the balance just right. And then when it comes to the Doctor's dialogue, he can do a reasonable approximation of David Tennant. So it does sound authentic. And the story works well. The twist at the end is good. Sound design is good. And David's reading is excellent. So, I'm going to recommend that. The Demons Within by Gary Russell, read by David Banks.
The BBC collection at the moment, the last 12 months or so, have been really churning out some great stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I only listened to that one in the last couple of days, and I was curious about David Banks too, but the voice that he approximated that got me was Martha. He did a great Martha in that too. So it was great to hear his 10th Doctor and Martha throughout that. But I will say that when the demon appeared at the end, I was hearing the cyber leader when he dropped his voice down, which was, I wouldn't say it was objectionable. Yeah, but I did hear it a little there. Fantastic. He's got a great voice. All right. I am going to recommend a very new release from Big Finish, and that is Goth Opera. I finished listening to that today, and I've got to say, this is now my favourite novel adaptation that Big Finish has ever done. I've not read the book. However, one of my criticisms for the novel adaptations previously has been that I felt that they're so dense that they're hard to pack into the format. the shorter format. What's good about this is it's a 3 CD set, and so I guess that it's a little bit longer, as long as Cold Fusion was anyway. But the story was fantastic. There's a different production team behind this. We've got a director and producer called David O'Mahony, which I'd love to speak to. He's done a few different things here and there, but this is really good. There's a different person doing the music, so we've got a different musical style, but the musical style through it is just, and it's dropped in the mix, so it's not overbearing, and it suits the story really, really well. I love the vampire story all the way from State of Decay. It was Terrance Dicks that set this all in motion, and we've got some good background from State of Decay. Then even in Zagreus there was background on the great vampires, and then Time Lord Victorious there was stuff in there as well, and many other things. And to get this with more stories on vampire lore, it's a fantastic job. Interesting, it's been adapted by Elizabeth Miles, because I know she and Paul Cornell have a close relationship. I know they do a Hammer Horror podcast together, so I don't know what else they do, but they've got that close relationship. So she did a fantastic job of adapting this story. All the actors were brilliant. The regular cast is on top form. Peter Davison's quite breathy in this one, but you'd expect that with vampires all over the place. And the Missing Adventures got that iconic cover as well that you always remember, with Nyssa with the fangs, and the original cover with the blood on her chest, which they edited for future print runs. Actually comes out in the interviews after that. It was Sarah Sutton made a comment to someone at a convention when they handed her the book for a signing, that it was quite horrific. She passed that on to someone, and then next thing she saw the book and it had been changed. So it may have had something to do with her and her comment there. But yeah, interesting, because Scott Hancock script edited this. He's on the credits as script editor. So I don't know. I can't remember. I haven't got it in front of me. I can't remember when this was recorded. So he must be doing a little bit of this as well as TV Doctor Who as well.
It was recorded October 23. So yeah.
Okay, so he would have been script editing while he was doing TV Doctor Who as well.
Well, maybe he could have had the script done a long time before they recorded it.
He could have.
I don't know. It's amazing. I'd be curious to know actually.
But yeah, highly recommend this. Absolutely, it's my favourite of the novel adaptations, and I know our friend Dave from the Doctor Who show has listened to this, so we've got to get him on and talk about it, Philip, as soon as you've listened to it.
And Just War.
That's right.
This is Just War as well. I'd love to get his opinion, both those two books to audio.
The only criticism I have of goth opera, and it's not anything to do with the story, it's just a production glitch that's I think they're fixing, is that they mucked up the title music. So the opening title music comes on, it's normal title music, but then rather than the siren sound at the end of the Howl theme intro, it kind of fades out before it gets to that point and goes into the story. And then for the closing theme, they do exactly the same thing. Opening title music and fades out. So that's done throughout all three parts. And I think it was an error in the mastering. They're going to remaster it and reissue it. So for anyone who has come across that and is affected by it, it affects it a little bit for me, because that kind of adds to the feel of the story for me, but that's just me. It may not affect everybody, and it certainly does not affect the story or the rest of the production in any way.
You do want the stinger on at the end, don't you? The snap Peter Howell stinger. For
the cliffhanger, you've got to have the cliffhanger sting. Yeah.
If it starts with the whoosh of stars from the opening instead, it doesn't quite feel right. It jars, because it's not what you're expecting to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but as I said, apart from that, you're in for a big treat. Let me tell you, it's one of the best things in ages.
I wouldn't mind a taste of Morrissey. What do you think his blood would taste like?
Milky tea, love.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Goth Opera.
You may call me Ruath. I am a Time Lord of Gallifrey. The ring I wear shows the great seal of Rassilon. I know the secrets of your past, and I know the great destiny that awaits you.
You're flying. What are you?
You've got an interesting mind. You're not human, are you?
How do you know? No, get away from me! I don't want to die.
Not up to me. Sorry.
Nyssa? You okay?
Tegan!
Hang on!
Tegan, what's going on?
Are you certain you're all right?
I just need to rest.
It's Nyssa you should worry about.
I am worrying.
Yes, I know that face.
What face?
The I'm missing something important face.
Am I? Maybe I am.
They called themselves the Great Vampires. To this day, the very mention of their name strikes fear in the heart of every true Gallifreyan.
I am Yavin, Lord of the House of Yar, father of all the Earth's undead. Kneel before me.
The power of the Time Lords in your veins. All of time and space is yours to explore and to conquer.
Together, we shall be Queen and King of the Night. We will unite the humans and the Time Lords in the great communion of the undead. Together, nothing will be beyond our reach.
Big finish for the love of stories.
On that note, Will, it's been a pleasure to be in your presence once again. Thank you.
Likewise, sir. Thank you for having me back. Sirs, even.
And I've got to say, I do watch you and the other podcasts. I watch you floating around on a couple of other podcasts, so it's nice to hear your stories there too. Yeah. And we're looking forward to the next one, so you can come back on again. Or we might get you on for something else.
Who knows?
Yeah. There's lots of stuff we can talk about. Tripods is 40 years this year. You ever want to talk about the tripods? Have me on.
Absolutely. I would love to. Don't know about Philip, because you'd have to watch it first, Philip, wouldn't you?
I'd have to watch
something. You've seen it.
Well, we can make him watch it, can't we?
We can try. Amongst all the audios he's got to listen to. All right. And Philip, it's been great to be back with you again, back in my
been too long, I know.
Home surroundings. Yeah, I know. We have had a few weeks where we've missed some episodes, but I've been madly travelling back down through the centre from the top end to get back to town. I've travelled about 5,000, bit over 5,000 kilometres since we spoke last. So, and I did that in about a week.
In about 5 weeks' time.
Oh, it's coming up quick, isn't it?
It is. Get your tickets.
It's going to be great. Yes, definitely. Get your tickets. sirensofaudio.com. All the info is there. All right. Thanks, guys, once again. And until next time, we will catch you all later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, Dark Contract, with our guest Will Hadcroft and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Check out our live event details and all other info on the podcast at sirensofaudio.com. Got some feedback? Send your emails to sirensofaudio@gmail.com, or you can DM us at any of our socials. The handle is @AudioSirens. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.